Hello one and all. Today I'm back with yet another hero overview. This time we'll be looking at the game's second ever LTE, Paulin, or better known by most as Panda. As usual, we'll jump straight in with the skills, then the exclusives, and finally discussion and analysis. It is worth noting, however, before we get stuck in, that Panda has a bit of a unique mechanic, in that most of his skills have added effects when he has over 100% effect res. And as having 100% effect res is so insanely important for Panda, when I read the skills, I'm going to read them as if Panda has 100% effect res. So we're not even going to consider what would happen if he doesn't have 100% effect res. This is strictly for those that have their Pandas at 100 and above, because if you don't, to be honest, you don't want to be using Panda. So Panda's basic attack hits everyone for direct damage and removes one buff from each opponent affected. Panda's second skill increases the defense and tenacity of all allies, as well as giving Panda damage immunity for one turn. Panda's passive makes him immune to control effects, so that's effects like silence, freeze, stun, hypnotize, etc., and increases his turn meter by 20% when he is hit by one of these control effects. And as well as that, it also increases the turn meter of all of his allies by a lesser 10%. On top of those effects, Panda also gets bonus tenacity based on his effect res. And Panda's final fourth skill cleanses all debuffs from all allies, gives everyone other than himself stealth, increases all allies max HP by 50% for 2 turns, and also heals them slightly based on Panda's max HP. So now that we've looked at the skills, let's look at his exclusives. At E1, Panda passively increases the effect res of his team at the beginning of a wave for 2 turns. At E2, Panda increases his turn meter by 10% for every enemy that has a higher speed than him at the start of a wave. And finally at E3, after using his fourth skill, Panda gets an additional turn, as well as granting block debuff to all allies for 1 turn. So that is Panda's kit, but how exactly is he used? Well, Panda is predominantly a PvP based hero. He does have some niche applications in PvE, but the majority of the time you're going to be using him in PvP as a counter to control effect units. And this is because Panda is a god at anti-CC. So freeze, silence, stun, hypnotize, all of that stuff, Panda can protect the team from it. But why and how does he do that? Well, with 100% effect res, Panda is immune to all of those effects. They can't do anything to him. In fact, when he gets hit by one of them, he boosts his and his team's turn meter. So to give you an example, if the enemy Nacil or a Sindor tries to control you at the beginning of a fight, Panda and his allies will get their turn meter boosted. He will usually take his turn and he'll clean everyone's control effects with his fourth skill. Then your allies will get their turn and they'll be able to act because they'll no longer be silenced, freezed, or whatever else. But there is one slight issue, however, and it's to do with how Panda is built before he reaches E2. And this is because at E0 and E1, if you want Panda to go first and clean everyone's debuffs, he needs to have over 100% effect res, but he also needs to be one of the fastest units on the team. And getting both of those stats isn't always easy, especially when you consider that 100 effect res is actually the bare minimum for PvP, and as some units like Lydia and Santa can reduce effect res, you actually really want around 150 effect res, ideally. And that's just to make sure he never falls below 100, because that will ruin all his skills and he won't function as he needs to. But when he gets E2, something huge changes. Panda gets a passive turn meter buff at the beginning of the fight for every enemy faster than him. And this means that even if your Panda is slow, he'll get a big boost at the beginning, and if an Ascindo or an Nacil or whatever controls you, he will get launched into first and clean everyone's debuffs. And so with that being the case, most people consider E2 to be Panda's most important exclusive level. He is still usable at E0, although it is a little tricky, but E2 is when he gets super strong. It is worth noting, however, that Panda going first doesn't matter as much if he's in a tank team. If your team can survive the first couple of rounds, he'll eventually get his turn and start cleaning debuffs and get to do his thing. If Panda is in a cleave team, however, which is a team that focuses on killing the enemy on the first turn before they get to do anything to stop it, then it's imperative that he gets that first turn so he can clean any CC that might stop your cleave from functioning properly. And so if you're using Panda in a cleave team at E2 or higher, another way to guarantee that he does his job successfully is actually to make him as slow as possible. If you make your Panda incredibly slow, you can guarantee he gets a massive turn meter boost from his E2, which will propel him into taking his turn first and allow him to protect your cleave from CC. In a tank team, however, speed is super important for Panda, as it will allow him to get more turns and therefore keep cleaning debuffs and keep everyone alive over the course of the fight. Always remember that the faster a hero is, the more they get to use their skills, especially in a long fight. And so just to clarify his recommended stats and gear, in 99% of cases you want at least 100% effect res, but probably more, and you want as much speed as you can get. No other stats are really necessary. Tough or dexterity is the best gear for him, with this being the case. And so although cleaning debuffs in PvP is Panda's main usage, there are some other things worth discussing about the hero. At E3, he gets an additional turn after using his 4th skill. This allows him to stealth his team and then use his 2nd skill, which gives him damage immunity. As a result, if the enemy has no AoE effects, they won't be able to hurt you for a full turn. And not only this, but at E3 he also applies block debuff to all allies for 1 turn, which means even after cleansing everyone with his 4th skill, they won't be affected by any following control effects or debuffs for a full turn. Looking at another part of Panda's kit, as his basic attack can remove buffs from all enemies, it can also be useful for removing shields from enemy teams, or sometimes other important buffs like Kaf's counter attack. Because of this, he's super good in Tower of Mark against the boss that puts a shield up constantly, as you can take that down whenever you want just by using Panda's S1. And another great part of Panda's kit is his ability to increase his team's HP cap by 50%, as this massively helps with survivability, but it also synergizes really well with certain heroes. So, for a few examples, it increases the damage of HP burn units, as HP burn damage scales with HP. It increases Agatha's damage, as her damage scales with HP. And it also synergizes with Nordak's shields. So, all in all, Panda is a must-have hero for PvP. Even almost 2 years after his release, he is still integral in the meta, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. With that being said, however, if you're looking for a strong PvE unit, although he's good in some areas, he's generally not your guy. But yeah, that's it from me, guys. I hope you found this useful. Thank you as always for watching. Good night and God bless.